They were killing fields in Cambodia. They were also killing fields in the United States. When the war goes into Cambodia, the college campuses explode in protests and in violence. On May the 4th, 1970, Kent State University has a protest over several days. It actually started as a barroom fight that spilled out of the bar, and then when the police were brought in to stop the fight, the people turned on the police. On May the 4th, the National Guard, under the command of the governor of Ohio, James Rhodes, opened fire and killed 4 unarmed students and wounded 9 others, one of whom they made into a paraplegic. When the smoke cleared, the tear gas and the smoke cleared, and people began to ask what happened. The governor, the media, the president blamed the students, the unarmed students who got shot to death by M1 rifles. Nixon called the 4 victims bums, to which the father of one of the victims, a girl, said, "My daughter was no bum." One of the people killed was actually on their way to class and had nothing to do with the protests. On May the 8th, 1970, students were bayoneted at the University of Mexico. Another protest was disrupted by what was called a hard hat counter demonstration. That is, blue-collar, working-class people in their hard hats came in support of Nixon in the war and started to get all over them. On May the 10th, 100,000 people protested in Washington. The 82nd Airborne was actually in the basement of the Executive Office building in full combat gear. Richard Nixon even went to the Lincoln Memorial and tried to talk with some of the students in what many said was a very awkward moment, which Nixon was saying, "You're all under communist influence, you realize that," which they were not. At Jackson State University in Mississippi on May the 15th, demonstrators were killed by police and National Guardsmen. Jackson State is an all-black college. Thus, it was hardly covered by the media. These are the pictures of the 4 young people killed at Kent State during the protest. In the upper left is Allison Krauss, whose father angrily denounced the president by saying, "My daughter was no bum." Jeffrey Glenn Miller, you see next, and that is the picture of him lying prone on the ground. A bullet entered his mouth and exited through the back of his head, killing him instantly. William Knox Schroeder and Sandra Lee Schuler, she was the one who was simply walking to her class, her speech therapy class, and she was not even taking part in the protest, but Nixon called her a bum anyway. The lower left is Governor James Rhodes of Ohio, who very quickly moved to try and make it look like the protesters were the ones who caused the violence. And the picture that you see at the lower right, that is Jeffrey Glenn Miller lying dead, but that is a young girl named Marianne Vecchio. She was 14 years old and a runaway from California, and somehow got swept up into the anti-war movement. And the picture that was taken that captures this moment won the Pulitzer Prize in 1970. The 2 students killed at Jackson State University were James Earl Green on the left, who was only a high school student that was visiting Jackson State that day, and Philip Lafayette Gibbs, age 21. There you see the gunfire that pockmarked the dormitory at Jackson State, where supposedly somebody was shooting, but there was no evidence. Even the FBI concluded that there was no evidence of a sniper attack. Notice the bullet-riddled wall. Buckshot even was used. That's how Gibbs was killed. Green was killed with a rifle. The picture that you see here is Nixon trying to talk to the protesters at the Lincoln Memorial, and you just kind of get a view of the awkwardness of the situation. These young people and a president who definitely appeared to be out of touch. He made the effort though, and present at that moment was my father, John Fitzmaurice Jr., who was in the judge advocate's office. He was there with them. He also reported to me that the next day during the protest, the 82nd cordoned off the street so that the protesters could march, but then would be kept away from government buildings, and then they marched right across the Potomac where they camped and then dispersed.